Oh my goodness. I hope that I have a connection right now. I'm just going to give this a few seconds to try to pick up. It's telling me no connection. So if you're there, chime in and say hi. I don't know why I'm having a bad connection tonight, but anyway, here we are. It is the third weekly Facebook live feed of Gender Creative 101. Tonight we're just doing a Q&A. I've gotten several questions from people over my website and other places that people have brought up some really good questions that I would like to try to attempt to answer. So I'll introduce myself again. I'm Marty Soroy. I am a frequent contributor of the Huffington Post, where I openly write about my gender creative son, Charlie. Last week in our live feed, we introduced my husband, Matt, and all three children, Jack, our oldest, Kate, our middle child, and then Charlie, our youngest. And all of these videos are available on my blog, which is gendercreativelife.com. They're also available on Facebook and now on YouTube. We have added a YouTube channel for Gender Creative Life, and you can watch the videos there as well. So you can go back and look at the last two if you want, if you're just now getting caught up. The first one was Gender Creative 101, What Is It?, where we described or tried to describe our definition of gender creative. And then last week was Gender Creative 101, Who Are We? And we attempted to introduce ourselves and our family and describe how we are an affirming family. So this week I have just a couple of, more than a couple, but a few Q&A, questions and answers. So thank you to those of you that sent questions in. I am seeking to try to do this every week, but if I don't really have material, I'm not gonna. I'm not going to go live, so I'll let you know as we go along. But basically, just kind of to start out, and especially for those that might be new to our live feed, we've been talking about gender in general and the fact that it is way more complex than most of us were taught when we were growing up. In no means am I an expert on this topic, and the good news is that you don't have to be an expert to talk about this. You just have to be willing to start the conversation and continue it. That's what this is all about. So gender, as we were taught growing up, meant the same thing as biological sex. However, that was incorrect. Gender is actually made up of three different parts. The first would be gender biology, or just biology, which would be our biological sex, and that is our sex assigned at birth based on the appearance of genitals and even your, yes, Kirsten, between the legs, when they take the baby out and say it's a boy or it's a girl. That's our biological sex. But then we have gender expression. This would be things that are more nuanced, like how we dress, how we act, our mannerisms, the way we carry ourselves, posture, things like that. And then there's gender identity, which is the third component, and that is all about how you feel, what you know yourself to be, how you feel inside. So for most kids, these three facets of gender line up and align kind of, quote, perfectly. But for other kids, these facets align differently. And we can have any combination of gender identity and or expression. So another misconception that happens is that people tend to think that gender expression or gender identity is related to our sexual preference or sexuality, but it is not. It is not the same thing. It is completely different altogether. So when we're talking about people who are gender creative, which is my preferred term for my child, just because I heard it about 8 years ago and I felt that it was most fitting for him and it was very positive. I didn't really like gender non-conforming because that suggested that you're deviating from a norm, and what is normal. So, and then Charlie ended up in 4th grade, after learning about all the different types of genders, saying that he believed that he is gender creative. So he has always stated that he's happy being a boy and having boy parts. He just prefers all the things that are stereotypically marketed to girls. And that includes clothing, friends, accessories, decor, games, movies, princesses, Barbies, all of that kind of stuff is what he has always, all of his life, gravitated towards. So, excuse me, when we have a term like gender expansive, that's just kind of an umbrella term, as is the gender spectrum, or even rainbow children, which is another term that I like to use to describe children. I started writing about this about eight or 10 years ago, but I really didn't begin going public with it until just this year, with Charlie's consent, of course, and I went into detail about that last week. He's very supportive of us being kind of an out family, and his siblings are on board as well, and so is my husband, which is a wonderful thing. But rainbow children is a term that I like to use because I feel that it describes this population of people that otherwise gets ignored. When I started looking for resources to support the type of child I was trying to raise, I continually fell short in finding anything for children. I could find plenty of resources for LGBTQ plus teens, young adults, senior citizens even, but I could not find anything to support raising this type of child. So my husband and I created our own group over the summer, shortly a couple of months after HB2 happened in North Carolina. And that is our way of kind of fighting against the system and turning a negative into a positive. So our support group is Search Safe Environment for the Acceptance of Rainbow Children. And we are welcome and opening to all gender expansive children that are ages kindergarten through 5th grade, because I feel like this is the population of kids that tends to be the most unsupported and or ignored. So that's who we're talking about in all of these episodes is, yes, transgender and gender creative people in general, but in particular children. Although our society teaches us that there's only 2 genders, as we were saying before, male and female, obviously there are really many, many, many genders. And, we've talked about this before, but it's goes all the way back to our Native Americans who had and still have 2 spirits in their tribes. And these are people who are the most revered members of the tribes. And these are people who are said to encompass either male and female tendencies or neither, or any combination of different gender expressions and identities. So not all children, as we know, fit neatly into a box that is either male or female for gender identity. And then for some children, there's the sense of being both or neither. Charlie is in a phase of his life right now where he is not comfortable answering the question yet, other than to identify as gender creative. If you were to ask him, are you a boy or a girl? He doesn't really know. And he has a lot of difficulty answering that question because he actually feels neither. And this is a realization that he came to a few months back, where he said, he was posed the question, do you feel more male or more female? And he said, I feel more like just a person. And So right now he's kind of in this neither stage. My daughter Kate has just walked in. Maybe she's going to say hi.
Hi.
This is Kate, my beautiful 14-year-old daughter.
Hi.
One of our supportive family members here. But anyway, forgot where I was. That's okay. It's okay.
You're saying how he's just a person.
Thank you. Yes. So anyway, we use male pronouns for Charlie because he said that he feels like that's just easier, and he does, you know, talk about the fact that he was born a boy. So, okay. Yes. Thank you, Kirsten, for helping me get back on track. We were talking about non-binary society. And my husband and older son are just now getting home, and they may join us as well in a few minutes just to say hi. But anyway, a lot of these children can also be described as gender fluid. Gender fluid tend to be people that kind of go back and forth. They easily navigate from one to the other, or are neither or different on different days. And it's all normal. These are all normal variations in human gender. And they do not mean that something is wrong with a child. The child's gender is not what other people tell them, but what they know to be true about themselves. And if you listen carefully to a child, they will tell you. And even if they aren't using words yet, they can show you what their gender is. These children have always been around. This is not something new, contrary to what a lot of people that I encounter think. We hear a lot of times people saying this is just so new. Well, no, it's not new, because we know it goes all the way back to the Native Americans who were here way before we were. But again, these children have always been around. And just think about when you were younger. Those of you that are around my age, I'm 42. So if you're, you know, anywhere within a decade near my age, you probably remember. And really, that's not even relevant, I guess, age. I mean, we all probably can remember kids we grew up with who did not act like a stereotypical male or female. I think the only difference is that now, with, I guess, more and more progressive generations of parents, we're finally realizing that this is just how certain children are born. It's who they are. We don't hide them in the closet. We don't stop telling them to be who they are. We don't punish them any more than you would punish a child who was born with a birthmark or a handicap or a different skin color. We just know that these are not best practices anymore. They have not led to good outcomes. And so society is changing and trying to adopt a more accepting mindset of non-binary people. And I think even though we as parents have great influence over our kids, because that's a question I'm asked a lot, is, you know, don't I think that I'm influencing my child to be this way? No. No matter how hard we may try as parents, we can't change a child's gender identity. We can't change their expressions of their gender. They might tone it down a little bit, or they might attempt to hide it from us as parents. But it's going to come out in some way, shape, or form during their life. What we can do to help our children, we can help our children, however, to have a healthy, positive sense of their gender, and a positive sense of themselves in relation to their gender. We can advocate for them, and we can help to educate others on the topic. So there's a lot we can do, even if we don't really understand it ourselves. So one of the questions that we were asked was, I think this came from someone who is also raising a gender expansive child, but doesn't really have, is just kind of at the beginning stages of acceptance. The question is, how can I support my gender expansive child? So I originally stumbled upon a wonderful website, and it's called genderspectrum.org. I have this listed on my blog under resources. This is my go-to website. I absolutely love them. And they're constantly updating their information. So it's very up to date. But I originally stumbled upon that when I started to ask some of these same questions. So a lot of the info that I'm sharing tonight is straight from genderspectrum.org. First and foremost, in order to support your gender expansive child, you need to create a supportive family environment. That is first and foremost. We have the ability to make the home a sanctuary of security and support for our child. And that is going to be the single most important factor in promoting lifelong health and well-being for your child, whether they're gender expansive or not. But especially if they're gender expansive, they have to know that home is safe. This type of safe environment kind of creates that buffer for your child from the hardships of life that they're definitely going to face outside of the home. So, we see it in Charlie. When he gets home, he's a totally different child than he is at school. He holds it together all day at school as best as he can. But when he comes home, we see the true person that he is here, the self that he doesn't reveal to very many other people. I think another thing that you can do when you're creating that supportive family environment is that you can require respect within the family. My husband did not arrive at the exact same page as me until a little bit later, but he's there now. And same for Charlie's siblings. And really all that it took was just one isolated incident of them witnessing Charlie enduring some discrimination. And it hurt them so bad seeing their little brother, or, my husband seeing his son treated this way, that was all it took. And you'll know it when you see it. If you have a gender creative child or a transgender child, you deal with it. You see how they're looked at, talked about, mocked, etc. in public, and it hurts very badly. And if it hurts us that bad, we can only imagine how much it hurts them and what type of damage it's doing to them. So if home is not safe on top of that, that's a recipe for disaster. So you've got to have that supportive family environment. With your immediate and extended family, it is imperative that you require and accept only kindness and respect for your child. And as the parent, you do have the right to do this. While you, of course, may not be able to change other people's opinions, you can certainly dictate how you expect others to behave and speak around you and your child. If your child is going by different pronouns, you absolutely have the right to ask your family to respect that. You can also express love and support for your child's gender expression. What does that look like? Well, it means allowing the child to choose without pressure, without unspoken messages, the clothes that they want to wear. Really, it's just clothes. They do need to have some choice there. Obviously we weren't going to let Charlie go out in the winter wearing shorts or something like that, but we do let them have, somewhat of a controlled choice. When Charlie told me that he really wanted a dress of his own to wear, I took him out to buy one. There was no reason not to, other than worrying about what other people were going to think. And we just have to let go of that mentality and stop trying to worry about what other people think. We need to focus more on changing the way other people think so that we can all live together in harmony. So you're letting the child wear the clothes that they wish to wear. This is how they express themselves. How and with whom they play. The rule in our house is that we don't have girls' toys and boys' toys. We just have toys, and everyone can play. Everyone is welcome to play, and we leave it at that. I found that a lot of Charlie's friends have questioned a lot. I say a lot. He really doesn't have a lot of friends. He's got a few good friends who know him really well. And in the beginning, some of these kids questioned him. Why do you play with Shopkins? Why do you play with Polly Pockets? That's a girl's thing. And he would explain to them, well, you know, what the rule is in our house. And then most of the time, kids his age would just be like, oh, okay. And then they'd go on and play, and it was no big deal. It was more often the parents that had an issue with it that made it into a big deal. This also means if you're going to express your love and support, you're going to let your children play, wear what they want, play with what they want, as I said, as long as they're not injuring someone. You're going to let them wear the accessories that they favor, the manner in which they wear their hair. Charlie is growing his hair out long right now. He wants to be able to do all kinds of awesome things with it, like braids, and I forget what else he said, but he wants his hair long. So we're doing that right now. We're growing it out. Also, you can allow them the decorations and images that they want to surround themselves with. It also, though, means helping them prepare for any negative reactions that they may encounter outside of the home. You can do this by practicing with them. Role-playing is something we do a lot of in this house. That's just kind of a natural thing for me because I grew up in the theater, and it just makes sense to me to role-play. So Charlie and I have definitely done a lot of that. I've done a lot of it with all three of the kids over the years, but helping them prepare for situations by role-playing so that when they are actually in that situation, it can spark a memory of what you've practiced at home, and it can help them be better prepared of how to respond. They also have the chance to practice their responses in a safe environment. And I think also it's about letting them know that, or making sure that they know that there's a safe adult for them to turn to in case if they ever need assistance, whether that's someone at the school, at camp, wherever. They've got to know who the safe advocate adult is. It also means discussing any negative or conflicting feelings that you might be struggling with over gender identity or expression. And you may have to talk about this with other adults, but you never talk about your conflicting emotions with your child, because that would be more harmful than helpful. I think also that there is an aspect where we have to allow zero tolerance for disrespect, negative comments, or any type of pressure from anyone, whether it's a family member or a teacher or whoever. And a concrete way to demonstrate ongoing support and acceptance for your child is to tolerate absolutely zero negative comments about your child from anyone, stranger or beloved family member. And this is whether your child is with you in your presence or not. So there's that. And sometimes this can mean following up with the people that make these type of comments in kind of an awkward and firm way, but it makes clear your commitment to your child and your child's well-being, and nobody really can argue with that. So it can also mean, though, needing to follow up with other parents or even the school or the community about comments that maybe you heard other parents saying. But this is definitely a dialogue that we need to be having with our communities and our schools right now. And the last part of that would be maintaining open and honest communication with your own child. I think that you have to stay open about this journey with yourself, well, both your own journey and your child's journey. And I think that by demonstrating to them that you're their partner in this process, and you show a genuine sense of interest, not just in them, but in how they see themselves and what they think and what they are experiencing, you show that you're there for them all the time, 100%. And this open level of communication can also help you evaluate your child's level of stress or distress, and whether they may need some additional help or outside support or intervention or therapy or anything else like that. So create, this is also known as an affirming family, and we're trying to live by that affirming family model as well. And that encompasses all of the things that I've just said. All right, so here's the next question. How do you stand up to bullying from both kids and adults? Woo, this is a big one. I need a sip of water. Hang on. Okay. I don't have all the answers for this one, and if anybody wants to chime in the comments section with things that you have said and done, that would be awesome, because we can all learn from each other. But I'm going to share with you a few of the, I guess, comebacks that I've given Charlie, things we've role played saying. And he has said a lot of these at different points in time, but you can kind of just be straightforward about it. And if another child or adult or whoever, I've told him, if someone comes up to you and says, "Oh, those are girly shoes," you can. And I mean, if this is a repeated occurrence, if this is someone who's being harassing or bullying even, then you have to at some point stand up and advocate for yourself. So there are things that you can say, such as, "Your words are meaningless to me," or "Your opinions have no effect on me at all," or you can even try questioning them, like, "Why do you say things like that? Why do you say such things?" I mean, really, make them think about it. Yes, as Kirsten pointed out, passive bullying from teachers or staff, that can happen too, unfortunately. So passive bullying is, we talked a little bit about this last week, and kind of what does that look like. Go back and watch last week's episode for more information on that. But we called it by a different name. We didn't call it passive bullying. I'm trying to remember exactly how we referred to it. But I've written a few blog posts on that very topic. So other things that I've told Charlie that he can say are, "I don't let someone like you get to me. I wish you would stop wasting my time." And if your child is really good with sarcasm, you can give them a few little snarky things to say that are not hurtful, but snarky and just kind of funny. Like, "You're a real expert at this. Congratulations." Or just a simple, "Are you done?" Or, "Wow, you discovered I'm different than you." Just sarcasm. It works great for some kids, right, Kate?
What?
Sarcasm. It works good for some people.
Yeah.
Then there's more philosophical things that they can say, like, "I will never feel bad because of you." Or, "It's funny how the people who know me the least have the most to say." And this one I really like a lot. And it's, "Judging another person does not define who you are. It defines who they are." Stop using me to feel good about yourself is another one. Oh, and here's another one that I like. "Build up your self-esteem some other way." And then there are more lighthearted things that you can say, like, "Oh, geez, where is your off button?" Or, "If you're waiting for me to care, you'd better pack a lunch because we're going to be here a long time." One that I've told Kate to say before when I wrote her a note was this one. "Does this drama of yours have an intermission anytime soon?" Remember that?
Yeah. Back in 7th grade.
Yeah, 7th grade drama. And then there's always things like, "Well, I didn't realize that you were an expert on my life and how I should live it." Please go ahead and continue while I take notes. So these are all examples of things. What I used to do for Charlie was I'd write him a lunch note every day, and on there I would put 3 jokes, 3 comebacks, and 3 quotes of wisdom. And I got to get back in the habit of doing that again. I was doing a play earlier this year, and I got out of the note writing habit, so I got to start that up again. But anyway, back to standing up to bullying. With gender-based bullying and or harassment, I guess the distinctions between bullying and harassment are important because they have different legal implications. So gendered harassment is supposed to be addressed in accordance with the federal guidelines, when they happen in a school setting, within the federal guidelines that are a part of Title IX. And all schools that receive funding for public education fall under Title IX. Back in October of 2010, 6 years ago this month, the U.S. Department of Education for the Office of Civil Rights issued a type of a form of like a Dear Colleague letter that kind of spelled out the clear wording regarding how Title IX applies to cases of harassment in school. So I have that, and I'm gonna read a little bit of that. Kate wants to read it, so I'm gonna let her read this part right here about Title IX.
Okay. So it says.
Move over.
Oh, okay. It says. I can't hold it.
Yeah.
It says Title IX prohibits harassment of both male and female students regardless of the sex of the harasser, even if the harasser and target are members of the same sex. Oh, are members of, that was
That's
it.
right.
It also prohibits gender-based harassment, which may include acts of verbal, nonverbal, or physical aggression, intimidation, or hostility based on sex or sex stereotyping. Thus, it can be sex discrimination if students are harassed either for exhibiting what is perceived as stereotypical characteristic for their sex or for failing to confirm stereotypical notions of masculinity and femininity. Title IX also prohibits sexual harassment and gender-based harassment of all students regardless of how the actual or perceived sexual orientation of gender identity of the harasser or target.
Thank you, Kate. That was excellent. That's the first time she's ever read that. So good job. So as it states, the harassment is not okay, is not accepted, has to be dealt with in the public school setting, even if it only happens one time. It can be if someone is like, and this happened to my child, that he was being called gay in 4th grade when he wasn't even, and still isn't, sexually identifying yet. So this would be gender-based harassment or sexual harassment because you are making a judgment call on someone based on your perception of their gender identity. So we can't do that. And having awareness about gender-related bullying in general, and just this having a broad-based knowledge of what is protected can help to increase the student's sense of safety. And ultimately less reports of harassment and bullying. So I looked up some of the policy at a local, on a local level under Title IX. Here's what is required of school districts. So school districts need to revise their bullying and harassment policies to explicitly include all forms of gendered harassment, sexual orientation, and gender identity / expression. Policies need to have clear implementation, reporting and response mechanisms, and align with federal laws, specifically Title IX. Educating staff, students, and families about policy revisions is an essential step for successful implementation. Again, at the local level, intervention programs need specifically to identify and teach about different forms of harassment and how these can be addressed, along with general anti-bullying initiatives. And then as for federal, the statement is passage of federal bills that explicitly set forth specific groups covered under harassment, such as the Safe Schools Improvement Act and the Student Non-Discrimination Act, can have observable and meaningful benefits for the well-being of those vulnerable to gender-based harassment. So another thing that you can do when you're dealing with bullying or harassment, or both, when you want to talk about demanding that respect from family, from the school, from whoever it is, there are several sample letters on genderspectrum.org that are kind of Dear Family and Friends letters. So I would encourage you to go to that website and look up what they have to say on the topic of bullying. And also look at some of those letters. They give you great examples and wording on how to kindly and politely expect family to respect your child's pronouns if they transition, and so forth and so on. I'm seeing a comment here from my sister-in-law about Title IX. Yeah. It wasn't originally written like that, addressing gender typing, but under the Obama administration, they have gone back and clarified that. And it does now extend to and include gender type harassment as well, based on perceived gender identity, perceived gender expression, perceived sexual orientation, and all of that. It is all there. And schools are very newly having to deal with it because people are now speaking out and not tolerating this type of behavior from classmates anymore. And I can tell you just from my experience with Charlie's school, it has been wonderful, especially coming from the county where we live, where there really isn't much guidance. I think I mentioned this last week, but our school county, the county here that we live in, that our school system is the size of the state of Rhode Island. And it's the biggest county in the entire state of North Carolina. It's just huge. So, hang on. Anyway, it's hard for places like our county to try to implement these things when we have people like our current sheriff right now who does not understand what even the definition of a transgender person is. And he is threatening to pull his resource officers from all of our schools unless if we adopt a universal transgender student in your class letter, similar to, in his words, the letter that we send out for kids that have head lice, as if a transgender student is contagious. So it's mindsets like these that we've got to change. Because first of all, the law says that it's unconstitutional and you cannot take away someone's basic civil rights. So, yeah, there's that. So check out those letters. There was one that I liked that addressed, let me see if I have it in this stack here. It just kind of opens with Dear Family and Friends. We have had some recent changes in our life that we would like to share with you, blah, blah, blah. So anyway, and it goes from there and talks about kind of the history of this child and how you've been through the therapy, and it's kind of an educational as well as informative letter. So those are good if you need a template to consider using to send out to friends and or family. let's see, what else about that do I want to touch on? How do you talk to schools about the needs of a gender creative or a trans child? Well, I think forming a positive relationship with the school administration and the staff, whether you're new to the school or not new to the school, is vital. It's absolutely vital. We have recently done this with Charlie's school, and I can tell you that the guidance counselors are going to deal with this in an amazing way, because this is what they're trained to do. They are up to date on best practices. And, you know, most schools already have written or even unwritten aspirations around inclusion and diversity, but they aren't frequently challenged on them. So bring these into your discussion with the school, just to show that what you want is what is best for the whole school, not just your child, and also for the community. And even before your child starts school, you can start preparing, which is what I was trying to do when Charlie was 4 and about to enter kindergarten. But in, what year was that? 2011? This wasn't even locally where I am discussed with the level that it is now. So it was way harder even just 5 years ago, trying to explain to a teacher what a gender creative kindergartner would look like. And I didn't even know back then that he had rights and protections written into the law. So train yourself on these things so that when you go into the meetings, you do know that your child has legal rights and the school has an obligation, and they know this, to provide every student with a safe environment for learning. But with this particularly vulnerable population of gender expansive children, there needs to be an additional layer of, like what my son has right now is a daily, every morning check-in with the guidance counselor. And if the guidance counselor can't be there, we have the school psychologist who's there part-time, who can meet with Charlie if the guidance counselor is off campus that day. But there is a plan in place that somebody is putting eyes and ears on him every single day that's not mom. So he knows that he's got a safe place to go and speak confidentially, and get coping strategies, advice, help. And the help is always great when family can provide it, but at his age, when it comes from somebody other than mom, it's huge. So we have a pretty detailed plan for the short term until we get him in. He is going to be working with a gender therapist, but we won't be seeing her till the end of this month. So this is our short term meantime plan, that he will be meeting with a professional in our school every single day. And administration is on board. Teachers are on board. You know, we just are very fortunate that it's such a wonderful school climate that he has. I don't know what other schools in our county are like. I'm sure that there are some that have already dealt with this, and there are others that have never even thought about it before. So, and everything in between. But I can tell you, this is about to bust wide open. Like, this is about to become huge around here. If this little support group that I'm running, you know, out of the LGBT center is any indication, we have basically quadrupled our membership in 3 months. So, yeah, this is not something that's going away. Another thing I wanted to say about the whole bullying thing was that, what I've learned is that bullying is often related to gender expression, even if on the surface it appears that it might be motivated by something else. My son in school is frequently mocked by another student who mocks Charlie's mannerisms. You know, Charlie will say something to a buddy like, "What do you want to play today?" And this other child will be right next to him and repeat verbatim what and how Charlie just said it. What do you want to play today? And then all of the little kids around him will laugh. And this is just not okay. We've got to do better. We've got to, it's got to start at home. And I know that some of these kids have parents that don't have this mentality, and they don't understand that we've got to stop breeding these hyper masculine little boys that are programmed to fight, and these ultra sensitive little girls who sometimes unfortunately end up feeling victimized. So we just have got to break down these gender walls. But anyway, when bullying is related to gender expression, that would look like, for example, a boy who's, as I've said before, taunted for being gay. Like other kids will say, you're gay. And not because, in fact, he is gay, but because his gender expression falls outside of what society expects or what society's norms of that gender look like. So maybe not all schools specifically name gender expression or gender identity as reasons for bullying, but it does not mean that they won't react proactively. I think that further education about gender diversity is often needed for teachers and school administrators to be able to respond more effectively. I think the biggest concern from teachers right now is that they don't know what they can and can't say. So they really need some guidance. And it starts like this, with us having these open communications. All right, so I also took a look at the ASCA, the American School Counselor Association, what their position statement is. And of course, they believe that the school counselor's role, that the school counselor works with all students through the stages of identity development and understands that this may be more difficult for LGBTQ youth. It is absolutely not the school counselor's role to attempt to change a student's sexual orientation or gender identity. I can't believe this has to even be said, but that is not the job of the school counselor or any therapist. That is no longer an ethical practice, and I don't know of anyone that does that anymore. But that's not what their job is. What it is that they provide leadership and counseling and guidance and serve as your child's advocate throughout every stage of the process. The school counselors are supposed to counsel with the students, advocate for equitable educational and extracurricular activities and opportunities for all students. And they have there's a whole bulleted list on genderspectrum.org of the statements and the position statements from both that organization and NASP, which is the National Association of School Counselors. So, and those do specifically state that they support transgender and gender diverse students. The language may be different from place to place. It might say gender expansive, gender nonconforming, gender variant, whatever. They all are umbrella terms that pretty much mean the same thing. All right, let's see what else. I'm gonna skip over some of my notes here because I want to move on to the next. Okay. Here was my next question. How do you talk to other parents about things like sleepovers? My personal experience with this has been that if you are honest and upfront with parents, they are usually more understanding than you would think. Charlie has more female friends than male. He always has. And he has had sleepovers at little girls' houses. And what we do is, I talk to the parent. I let them know as much as I can about Charlie without compromising his integrity. And they just seem to get it. I don't know, maybe he's just picking really good friends, but I've never had an issue with a parent that was uncomfortable having Charlie spend the night at their house. I mean, when you see him with his female friends and you see that he's just like one of the girls, I don't know, nobody's had a problem with it. So, fortunately for me, that has been good, but I do find, I mean, there can't be surprises, you know. It needs to be something that you're forthcoming about. And again, this is why I advocate so publicly about this. I want there to be no question out there that we are a supportive family. We are an affirming family raising a gender creative child who we do not want to change because he is perfect exactly as he is. Well, I mean, yes, we want him to change and grow, but we don't want him to hide who he is or to live a non-authentic life. All right, so someone else asked about what kind of places are there where kids feel safe, LGBTQ plus kids. My biggest recommendation would be to find your local LGBT center. On my website, gendercreativelife.com. Under the resources tab, I have a list of places, but specifically I have a link to a map of the United States that lists all of the LGBT centers in your area. So you can find those easily there as well. We had another question about what children's books do you recommend? What parents' books do you recommend? I'm just going to name you just 3 of my favorite of each. And I will say that you can find a full comprehensive list on, well, not comprehensive, but just a longer list on my website under the resources tab. But just a few that I like. The first one that I discovered was My Princess Boy by Cheryl Kilo Davis. This is great for very young kids. It uses simple language and pictures. It was one of Charlie's favorites from about age 3 on up. Another book that I love is Jacob's New Dress. This is by Sarah Hoffman, and this one is great because the story speaks to the unique challenges that are faced by boys who don't identify with traditional gender roles. And that it looks very different for a gender creative boy than a gender creative girl. Difficult either way, nonetheless, but our society has adopted way more stigmatization for feminine presenting males than masculine presenting females. It's just kind of something we've done that's been harmful. And then my third favorite is called Red, a Crayons Story, and this one is by Michael Hall. Now this one is also kind of simple with a lot of pictures, but it's just a little bit more symbolic because it's about finding the courage to be your true self, whoever or whatever that is, and all about being true to your inner self. And it can be read on multiple levels. It doesn't have to be a specific LGBTQ book. It kind of offers something for everyone. So that's just a great, more general book. Oh, and I have to put in a plug for this cartoon that Charlie is obsessed with called Steven Universe. Steven Universe was created by Rebecca Sugar. Gender is at the forefront of the conversation surrounding everything Steven Universe. This is one of the first cartoons ever that has been completely created, designed, illustrated, produced, written, everything by a female. And then with Rebecca Sugar as the creator, her intention was kind of to tear down and play with the semiotics of gender, and wanted to do that in cartoons for children because she felt like this is kind of an absurd notion that boys' cartoons are different than girls' cartoons, and they're fundamentally different because boys' cartoons often feature superheroes and Girls often feature princesses and things like that. So this is a show that's been praised for its glorification of the strengths of femininity, the dilution of gender barriers, and the emphasis on a wide array of relationships between women. And also, it is aimed at a whole family audience. So check it out sometime. Steven Universe, Cartoon Network, I think is where it's on. Charlie streams it through Netflix, so I'm not positive, but I think it might be Cartoon Network. But that's a great show for kids. All right, parents' books. Let's see. I've got 3 favorites. The first one that I read was called Raising My Rainbow by Lori Duran. She also has a blog of the same name. This is her personal account of raising a gender creative, and she is who I learned the term from, and she learned it from Dr. Diane Ehrensaft, who coined the term. But this is her personal account of raising a gender creative son, and also is a blog. So you can read her online, or you can buy the book and read her story. But it was so relatable to me because it just felt like she was telling my story, and her son is only just about a year or 2 older than mine. So there's been every battle she's had to face, I have too. So I've really looked up to her. There's another book called The Gender Creative Child by Diane Ehrensaft, PhD. I mentioned her just a minute ago. This book is a more comprehensive, more up-to-date resource than her former book that she put out, which I'll mention quickly. It's called Gender Born, Gender Made. And again, all of these books are listed on my website under the resources tab, gendercreativelife.com. But Gender Born, Gender Made is a great book too, but the Gender Creative Child is great. What I like about it is that it's just very comprehensive and very up-to-date, and it talks about how even now, as up-to-date as we are, the language is still evolving, and new combinations of gender identities and expression are coming out every day with lightning speed. So that's a good one. And then The Transgender Child, written by Stephanie Brill and Rachel Pepper. This is somewhat of a scholarly read. It's not an easy read, and I have to thank my mom because my mom read this book first as soon as she realized what we were dealing with Charlie and what kind of child we had. She wanted to learn everything that she could, so she bought this book and read it, and she was telling me about all of these legal rights that he had way before I was ever looking into it. So I've got to give my mom a big thumbs up for being that awesome advocate. The Transgender Child is, again, not an easy read, but when it was released in 2008, it was groundbreaking. It offers kind of an extensive understanding of gender variant and transgender youth, and it seeks to answer a lot of common questions that parents of these children have. At the time that it came out, it was the first of its kind guidebook for the unique challenges and the thousands of families who raise gender diverse children, or any child that steps outside of a pink or blue box. So that is a good read as well. But do check out my website if you would like to see a longer list of books and resources. And check the comments here too, because I'm seeing several people chiming in with suggestions as well. Someone else asked the question, how do you deal with traditionally divided things like sports teams, camps, sports leagues, and other out-of-school activities? This is not one I've had to deal with a whole lot because Charlie has never had an interest in doing team sports. But I guess it's fair to say that many of the same situations that arise in school that we've talked about also arise in out-of-school activities. You know, and things like privacy considerations, restroom and locker rooms, which we now suddenly have to worry about in North Carolina with HB2, and overnight sleeping arrangements for field trips, things like that. Again, Find that one advocate, find that person in charge who is going to be the one that you can talk to, the one that is going to take it seriously and do something about it. Just as with schools, most adults who run these activities probably don't have experience with this type of child yet, but they will shortly, if not at some point in their career, have to deal with this. So, you know, somebody's got to start it. Sometimes camp or outside activities are opportunities for gender expansive kids to kind of see what it's like to present as the opposite gender, if they're not already doing so at home. You know, you've heard stories in the past about girls who get the opportunity to play on all boys football teams, things like that. So I guess just depending upon what documentation you would need to register your child, you could think about registering them as their preferred gender. You can do this at school as well, and it's completely confidential. And then just, you know, some families choose to be just completely open with all camps and activities and kind of bypassing that privacy. But I think it's important to assume positive intent of everybody at all times and help to work with them to educate their staff, because we are all going to be better from this type of education. On genderspectrum.org, there's a whole article about gender and sports at school. I will just refer you to that article because it's a really good read. It's called Why Sports Matter, and there's a lot of really good points and subtopics in that. And it talks about how schools play a crucial role in the manner in which young people make meaning of the world around them, and sports is very ingrained in a lot of that. So those of you that have children that are into these type of activities like sports or gender divided extracurricular activities, you might want to check out genderspectrum.org and look at some of their suggestions and resources. The next question I got was, what are your responses to strangers' inquiries of, are you a boy or a girl? Or, why are you wearing girl shoes? So, this is something that Charlie is getting really sick and tired of hearing. I wish there was a way, you know, what he told me earlier today was, we had a family meeting earlier today where my husband and all of the kids were present, and we have kind of open forum for somebody to bring up a topic about whatever's upsetting or bothering them, and then anyone can chime in. And Charlie said that he really wishes that at his school he could have the opportunity to get up on the stage with a microphone and tell the whole school at one time who and what he is, so that people would stop asking him questions about it every day. And I don't know if he would actually have the courage to really do something like that, but sorry. just the fact that he said he would like to do that really spoke to me of how exhausted he is having to explain himself all the time. So some of the responses that I've shared with him that he can say to people who ask, are you a boy or a girl, are some of these. We've encouraged him to say, just to be honest and say, I'm gender creative. Let me tell you what that means. It means I was born a boy and I identify as a boy, but I just prefer everything that's typically appreciated by girls. And then let him use that as an educational opportunity. Other responses we've told him to give are simply, I'm me. Or if they say, are you a boy or a girl? Then just say, yes, and leave it at that. You could also take the choice of saying something like, you know, excuse me, but that's a really, that's awfully rude of you. You know, how would you feel if I asked you, what are you? Which are you? And here's one that I found online and I told him to use, and I absolutely love this. This is one that I wrote on one of his little lunch notes, and it goes like this. I'm not a boy. I'm not a girl. I'm an experience. I love that one. And I think they, that some version of that comes from Steven Universe anyway. Another thing one time I told him he could say was, do I have to choose? Or another one that I like equally as well is when they say, are you a boy or a girl? You can say, well, what do you think being a boy or being a girl means? And let that open up a dialogue and just listen. What do they think it means to be a boy? What does it mean to be a girl? You know, and have a dialogue. Sure, they're only 10 years old, but they can have these conversations. For older people that might get asked questions by little kids, they all have their own things that they say, but the one that I heard explained one time was a transgender woman who responded, I'm a transgender woman, which means when I was born a girl inside of a boy's body. So now my doctor is helping me fix my body so that all of me can match. I liked the way she explained that, but I don't know that, well, of course, gender expansive kids don't have the option of all of, surgeries and whatnot until they're a specific age. But there are some other answers they can give, such as I'm a middle gender, or I'm a little of both. I'm part boy, part girl. Some people call me a two-spirit. Or, again, you can go back to challenging them with questions. What does it matter? Or why do you ask? Or I'm a boy. Was there a reason you needed to know? Just things like that. Somebody else had asked about gender-neutral clothing lines. And gosh, as we all know, clothing tends to be designed, marketed, and shopped for in very gender binary terms, with separate collections, sizing, and store selections for men and women. But fortunately, that is slowly shifting. There has been a lot of companies extending gender-neutral options, and I'm going to tell you names of 3 different online companies. One of them is called Gardner and the Gang. Gardner, like you work in the garden, but it's spelled Gardner, and the Gang, GANG.com. This is a Swedish designer, and they draw all of their prints, and they make characters that all have a story to tell. It's really interesting to read about them. They say that they love to come up with different themes for each range, ones that children and parents alike can all relate to and fall in love with. Their original art is all hand-drawn, and the drawings are then turned into screens, which are then screen printed on organic cotton. So I'm sure these are very pricey clothes, but that is one option. There's also a website called Tootsa, Tootsa. So it's tootsa.com/en-us. This is a unisex children's clothing brand. They say that their line is to be enjoyed by girls and boys alike. And it started out of, where did it say? Scandinavia. Anyway, that's a good one. Check it out. They have some pretty cool stuff. And then there's one in Canada called Muttonhead, MuttonHeadstore.com, muttonheadstore.com, which is a unisex line of clothing for adults. So, the thing, though, with our family is that my son actually prefers to shop in girls' stores. because he just wants to sparkle all the time. So we don't really shop for gender neutral. He specifically wants girls' clothes, so that's what we do. I only have a couple more questions here. A couple of people have asked if I've had any privacy issues since going public, since one of our articles went viral. I'm going to knock on some wood here, but so far so good. Aside from receiving the, oh my God, right now, it's somewhere over 816 friend requests from people I don't know on Facebook. Aside from that, we haven't had any intrusions or invasions of privacy, aside from a couple of aggressive reporters, but we just ignored them and they went away. We were very selective about who we talked to. I ended up having to create a fan page for Charlie just so that all these awesome messages that people wanted to send him could get to him. And that way, he's not old enough to have his own Facebook account yet, but this is kind of a way to let him feel like he's participating, in Facebook, even though he's not old enough for an account. So he has a fan page. It's Charlie, the Gender Creative Kid. And then I had to create a page for myself, Marty Soroy, writer, so that I can still connect with these hundreds and hundreds of people who I do want to connect with. I just don't necessarily want them on my personal Facebook page. So we've done that, and that has been very helpful. And that was some advice that someone gave me early on after that first story went viral. They said, create a fan page and don't have a whole bunch of people you don't know on your personal Facebook page or whatever. So we did that, and that was very helpful. What else? I guess the only bad part is, the trolls, the internet trolls, the negative people. But I've said this before and I'll say it again. The negative, hateful comments tend to live in the comments sections of social media, the comments sections of places like Facebook, Huffington Post, which I am a frequent contributor to, BuzzFeed, places like that. That's where the negative comments live. But the type of people who actually reach out and make a point of finding you, tracking you down, and sending you a letter or an email, those are people that are reaching out to you because they are extremely thankful, and they're so thankful that it just has to spill over and they have to tell you. I can't say how many people tons of people have told me through emails and letters that they've never, ever, ever reached out to a writer of any article about anything in their entire lives until now. So the type of people who seek you out and find that and find out, how to get in touch with you, I find that these are the people who are going to be your supporters. These are the people who have the kind things to say. The people that are trolling the internet and leaving negative, hateful comments, very discriminatory and ignorant stuff, these people are the people who are just hiding behind that veil of anonymity that they perceive to have sitting behind their computer screen, and the types of things that they say online are not typically the type of things they would say face to face with you in real life. So my advice to people that I've connected with who also are writing publicly has been that you need to stay away from the comment sections. Originally, I started reading all of it because I felt that even the negative comments helped me to understand what I wasn't communicating well through my writing and how I needed to improve getting my point across. But at some point, and especially after we became viral, I realized that there's just trolls out there that just want to be nasty and try to bring you down. And they may not even really believe what they're saying, but they just want to be argumentative. So it's best to just disengage and ignore that stuff. Somebody else wanted to know, how are things going for Charlie in school this year? And Thank you. Oh, and I just have to say hi to Candace Cox, who just popped on. And I want to say thank you because Candace is a wonderful trans woman advocate here in our state. And Charlie met her after, during a talk back after, oh gosh, was it Newsies or Kinky Boots? I think it was Newsies at the DPAC. He met her and she just got down at his level, and he was starstruck, and she talked to him and told him how important he was, just as he is, and that meant a lot, so thank you. This school year for Charlie, things are going back and forth. The school itself is doing a great job of addressing this since they've never had to deal with it before, and also because I work there, so that creates a whole different level, I guess, of awareness since I'm there and I see it every day. But still, every single day in school, either I see it for myself or Charlie tells me that yet another kid has asked him, "Are you a boy or a girl?" Or why do you wear girls' shoes? Or why do you wear girls' clothes? I even had a student ask me one time, "Mrs. Soroy, did you know that your little boy wears Skechers?" And I was like, yeah, I do know that because I bought them. And I bought them because he likes them. It happens to be his favorite colors. He likes that they light up, and that's that. But anyway, I mentioned earlier how he said he wanted to get up on a stage at school with the microphone and just tell everybody all at once and get it all out, who he is and what he is, so that they'll understand. But I'm afraid that even if he did that, there would still be that handful of people that just don't get it. So some days he has the confidence to go up, I believe, on that stage and shout to the world who he is. But other days he's withdrawn and less confident. One day at a time, you know. He is at a point where he is choosing to wear the girls' clothes that he's gotten from Justice. He's choosing to wear those pretty much more often than not, and I'm really proud of him for that because it is his choice. And I know that when he puts on those sparkly shirts and pants and sequins and goes to school like that, it's like preparing to go into a war zone. And he chooses to do it. So, God, you got to give the kid props because it's amazingly brave. One day at a time, sparkling head to toe. And I guess the last question I'm going to answer, unless if anybody has one here, and I see my friend Jen. Hey, Jen. Are these the same kids most of the time? Yes and no. I mean, the little group of kids in his grade that kind of tease him and mock him, mock his mannerisms, mock his voice, that's the same pocket of kids. But for the most part, I guess a lot of these kids are, Charlie's in 5th grade. A lot of these kids are younger than him. So it's like every year with the new crop of kids, it's, 200 brand new kids in kindergarten that want to know what his deal is, what's going on. Are you a boy or a girl? What are you? So it's never ending. Okay, last question I'm going to answer that I was given ahead of time. I will answer, and then if you want to pose a question here through the live feed, you can, and I'll attempt to answer it. The question was, how did you feel when you first realized Charlie was different? Okay, so it was kind of a no-brainer for me because, and I wrote a blog post about this as well. And this is the blog entry that I used when I appeared in a show called Listen to Your Mother last May. I've been blogging about Charlie since he was, all of his life really, but blogging about this specific thing since he was about 2.5. It occurred to me all of a sudden. Up until that point in time, we were buying him all boys stuff, including toys, clothing, everything, books about trucks and dumpsters and construction. And, you know, he was never interested in any of that. And really it was about at age 2.5 where he started showing a preference. And I'm sorry for those of you that have heard this story a gazillion times. I'm going to tell it again for the people that have never heard it. But when I knew was when we were in Target, and I had all 3 of the kids with me with gift cards that they had received for Christmas, and they were each going to pick out some stuff with their Target gift cards. And Kate went to the girls aisle and looked at the princess stuff. Jack went to the boys aisle and started looking at the Star Wars figures and the Lego sets. And Charlie, I just naturally took him over to kind of like, they had a little, like a toddler area. And back then, in that year, I guess that was 2008-ish, they had Target, even their toddler toys were like segregated boy and girl. So I took him to the little area that had boy toddler toys, and nothing caught his eye. He wasn't interested. So I thought, well, maybe that's because he sees his older brother looking at more cool stuff. So let me take him over there with his older brother, which I did. And I tried to get him interested in everything that his brother was looking at, but he had no interest. I tried showing him things that were at the lower level, that was like, you know, Lego sets for boys, but for younger boys. And what he ended up doing was just sitting down on the cold, hard floor, playing with the Velcro on his shoes, and looking very detached. And I was feeling frustrated because I wanted to get the heck out of there. It's not my cup of tea spending a Saturday morning in Target with 3 kids looking for toys. God, that's torture. But I was frustrated. I wanted him to just pick something. But out of somewhere, I got a little bit of patience, and I thought, maybe I should give him a choice. So I said, well, Charlie, which aisle do you want to look at? And he looked up at me with these big eyes and this look that he was thrilled that he even had a choice. And he took me by the hand and led me over to the princess aisle and showed me this big Snow White mirror with lights and bells and whistles that said, "You are the fairest one of all." And then it was, this I want, you know, and it was a done deal. When I saw the joy that thing brought to him, I was like, oh, I get it. I totally get it. I mean, I grew up in the theater. I had a lot of very feminine acting male friends who, some were gay, some are now trans, but, and some are straight, but there was a whole variety of people that I grew up with. And so this was nothing new for me. I just thought, oh, okay, he's one of them. Maybe he's like my theater friends. I can dig this. I can get on board with this. So, that was kind of how I learned that he was different, and how it stuck, and how I realized. And very shortly after that, we switched over, and the only thing he got was girls' toys, because that's all that he wanted. Now, he was still having all of his friends come to his birthday parties, giving him trucks and things, and God bless him, he's always been so appreciative of everything that he's given, that those kids never would have known that he was not happy with getting a dump truck. And he would make an effort to attempt to try to play with the gifts that he didn't care for. But he'd play with it like once, and then that was it. Now, his princess costumes, because one year for Christmas, when he was 3, the only thing he wanted for Christmas was a dress-up trunk full of princess costumes. And that's what he got that year. A dress-up trunk with a princess costume for every Disney princess there ever was. And he lived in those costumes all year long. Now that he's a little older, he does do some gender neutral things like computer gaming, Minecraft, stuff like that. But he will never ever turn down the opportunity to play dolls, Barbies, Shopkins, Polly Pockets, any of that kind of stuff. He will never turn down that opportunity, and he definitely would rather play with girls than with boys. Although he does have one really super cool best guy friend at school right now who they're unlikely friends, but maybe that's why the friendship works. They're total opposites, but they're also very much alike. So I guess even though I was accepting when I found out that this is how he is, there was also a little part of me that, I don't want to say died, that's the wrong word. I guess a little part of me that thought, oh my God, let me brace myself because he's got a tough life ahead of him. So that's why I'm doing what I'm doing, because I'm just trying to make the world a little bit more accepting, step by step, day by day. Just wrote a blog post today about, actually I typed it up on my on my iPhone at the park yesterday. Typed it up as it was happening, and I wrote about that, and I shared it on Facebook today. So if you get a chance, read that, because it kind of is a glimpse into our life and what it's like going places, trying to live as your authentic self in a society that's constantly telling you not to be who you are. And anybody can relate to this. Anybody that feels different in any way, shape, or form will understand this theme. So yeah, definitely. I would love to hear your stories. That's been probably the best part of everything, is connecting with all these gender diverse folks all over the world, and hearing their stories. So if you've never written to me, I'd love to hear from you, because I really take a lot of interest in hearing other people's stories and how they got to where they are now. I have a lot of teenage kids that write to me that want to know how to tell their parents. I just wish I could wave a wand and make the whole world better, a better place, but I can't. But that's why I do what I do. That's why I'm public. And again, I'm public with the whole family's permission, but most especially with Charlie's permission, because it is his personal life. But he is very on board with us getting this message out. Go back and watch our video from last week or even 2 weeks ago, and you'll see Charlie is very loved. Charlie is very safe here at home and in public as much as we can keep him safe. I can't guarantee his safety. We could go to the grocery store tomorrow and be blown up by a bomb. And unfortunately, in today's society, that is probably more likely to happen than him getting beat up for being who he is. Just the way it is. It's a crazy world we're living in. Do your part and go out and vote. That is the most important thing we can do right now. We have got to get certain people out of office that are in office right now in North Carolina. That's the only way that we're going to make progress. We also have a lot of people in power in North Carolina who are saying, I don't want to talk about social issues. Well, okay, fine. If our leaders are not going to talk about social issues, then we, the people, are going to talk about social issues. We're going to do Facebook Live like I'm doing here. We're going to talk about it until we are heard. And that's that, because these children are an extremely vulnerable population, and they need our full support. They need our love, and they need us to be their advocates, because they don't have a voice, being the young children that they are. With that, I will say goodnight. Seeing here from my friend Jen, she deals with the same problems. I've gotten to know Jen and her family pretty well, and I know that her child and Charlie have dealt with, probably verbatim the same struggles. So read my blog post, because I want people to understand what it looks like for these children, day-to-day life. And if that can help you to teach, if you have a cisgender child, if that can help you to teach them to have a little more compassion to children who look different, please teach them. Please teach them. I'm going to pull it up right now. I'm drawing a blank. Like, what the heck did I name it? Oh, Alone in a Crowded Park. That was my blog post. Now, it does have a happy ending, but, you know, it is pretty bittersweet because that's just the way Charlie's life is. It's honest. It's raw. It is what we deal with every day. And people, unless if you have a child that is different in any way, you don't believe that discrimination is real because you don't experience it. So take a look into our life, see what we go through, please, and speak out and support, vote, advocate, do everything within your power. We've got to make this world a better place than we left it. We are not here to raise clones of ourselves. We are here to make the population better and evolving to something greater. So thank you all that took time out of your life to join me tonight for this talk. Again, I am no expert. I'm just willing. I'm just willing to talk. So it's an important conversation we need to continue. Text me, write me, private message me, email me through Facebook or my blog. Let me know what questions you have, what topics you would like to see discussed on future shows. I am going completely by your lead right now because I'm kind of out of material. Unless if I just start like reading my blog posts to you and you don't want me to do that because that would be boring. So let me know what kind of questions you have and what we can talk about next time. Until then, I wish everyone peace, love, and rainbows. And also, let me get a quick plug in for my support group at the LGBT Center. SEARCH stands for Safe Environment for the Acceptance of Rainbow Children. And if you're not local, we do also have a closed and private Facebook group. Members are screened before they're allowed to join, just for everyone's protection. But refer people to us if they could benefit from this type of support group. All right, so good night, everyone. Thank you so much for tuning in again. Love you all. Love your support. Thank you for the comments. Thank you for the love. We appreciate you so much, and we will see you next time. Good night.